Okay. Let me just share. I hope now it's on slide mode. Fine. So this is the outline of today's study. We have introduction, definition of terms, basic structure and the functioning, and also we'll talk about some respiratory healthy practices that if time will allow. And I've said that in the introduction, in the respiratory system, we have the respiratory zones where we'll be talking majorly on the bronchioles, the uh, alveolar duct, and alveoli. That is where actually gaseous exchange takes place. Then we'll also talk about the conducting zones where we have right from the nose, then the nasal cavity into the trachea, and before the trachea, you have the pharynx and the larynx, then the bronchi, then leaving the trajectory to the lungs. So we want to define some few terms. Number one is the respiratory system. This is just uh, this is just my definition of the same. But you can always subscribe to other definitions. So respiratory system is actually a system which entails the entire apparatus from the nose to the alveoli. And I said, even past that, responsible for gaseous exchange. And we have the respiratory zones. These are sites actually where gaseous exchange takes place. So if you hear of respiratory zones, the sites where gaseous exchange takes place. Then we also have the conducting zones, and these are just rigid, vessels that air passes to reach the sites of gaseous exchange. An example of this is actually the trachea, and we also have just the nostrils and all that. Now, this is basically the basic structure of the respiratory system. So, uh, the location of the body is actually the thorax, but beyond the thorax, we have the nose, we have the oral cavity, and we have also the nasal cavity there, and also the larynx or the voice box. So this is basically the structure we'll be talking about the whole week, and the diseases, uh, uh, the anatomy, the physiology, the pathophysiology, and lastly the pathology, that is the diseases. So when we'll be talking about diseases like pneumonia, you'll now be able to appreciate more. So what are the functions of the respiratory system? What are the functions of this system? Number one is just to supply oxygen and dispose, carbon dioxide. So this is actually what is now referred to as gaseous exchange. So this is the main function of this system. So the second one is respiration. Uh, for distinct processes to actually happen in the body, we need oxygen. And when we talk about respiration, basically, it's actually mostly associated to oxygen use. So think about processes like formation of glucose from maybe lipids, or formation or the breakdown. That is basically, let's talk of maybe breakdown of cholesterol to form glucose. This is a process which requires oxygen supply. So it's part of the respiration, but respiration also involve uh, ventilation. So number one, we have pulmonary ventilation and also the external respiration. So pulmonary ventilation just involves moving air into and out of the lungs. That is the simplest definition we can give it, and that is what I've said. And we also have external respiration, where there's a gaseous exchange between the lungs and the blood. The lungs and the blood. Think about the heart, and in the heart we have a very special type of artery called the pulmonary artery, which takes the deoxygenated blood from the lungs to the from the heart to the lungs, and the pulmonary vein takes the oxygenated blood from the heart from the lungs to the heart, and this actually forms part of the external respiration. So this is one of the functions of of uh, of the of the lungs of the lungs. Then we have the third function, which is transport, and this just involves the transportation of carbon dioxide and oxygen between the lungs and the tissues So then lastly, we have the external respiration, where there's a gaseous exchange between the systemic blood vessels and the tissues. This is more uh, respiration. Of course, this is respiration. But now, this there's a slight addition of the same. So this is what we want to unpack in a few more minutes, and basically what happens. So let's start from the nose, the very first organ where actually air gets into. So the this is actually the only external visible part of the respiratory system, and it functions by number one, providing the airways for respiration, just the airways for respiration, down to the trachea, down to the lungs, of course. So one of the functions of this system is that it provides, it moistens, or it humidifies and warms the air. So it makes it, the air which gets into your system is of the temperature of the environment. Let's say it's a room temperature of 25, but what is the temperature of your body? Around 30, 37 there. So it moistens this air and also warms it. Uh, it warms it, that is to say, before it just getting right into the respiratory tract. Number two, that it filters. It helps in filtering inspired air and cleaning it. If there's any foreign substances there, then it cleans it. How does it do this? We have the mucus, the mucous membrane, the mucoid membrane, uh, sort of a mucus, thick fluidy substance, and also we have the hair, the hair right there, which actually filters and also cleans the foreign matter in the air you're breathing in. Um, and you cannot speak properly, or you cannot make an eloquent, um, audible. Okay, it can be audible but not heard without the nose. So the nose also serves as the resonating chamber for speech, so that you can be able to speak well. And we'll see in a few that the nose is actually directly linked to the voice box, which helps you to make eloquent speech. But this is not in the line of respiration, nor in the line of gaseous exchange. Uh, and it also helps in housing the olfactory receptors. Olfactory receptors are those receptors you're using to smell. So the smelling receptors are actually in the nose. So these are some of the functions of the nose, and you can see the structure from the lateral view. We have the olfactory region, that is the sensible. The nose is one of the five senses. Then we also have the auditory tube opening, where this is just responsible for sound, auditory for sound, and also for just for you to be heard clearly. And the respiratory region, then we also have the vestibular region. I hope you guys can still hear me. Someone just confirmed that you can still hear me clearly, and that we are together up to there.
Can hear you.
Okay, nice. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Fine, fine. So let's proceed. Okay, nice. So let's proceed. So we have the we have what is called sinuses. This is more of a cavity or a hollow space in the bone or of tissues. And so actually in the bones, there's a place where there's actually more of a space. And this space, uh, in referring to the nasal cavity, so sinuses are cavity or whole space on the bones that surrounds the nasal cavity. And we'll be able to see this in a few. So the sinuses make the skulls to actually be lighter because if you realize uh, if the whole space is filled with bones, then there's actually uh, no much activity in part of the bony tissues. And also it also helps to warm and also moisten the air from even as you breathe in. So sinuses, let me show you the sinuses how they look like so that you may be able to appreciate. Now, you can see these pictures. So inside your facial bones, we have the frontal sinuses, we have the maxillary sinuses, and my internet keep logging me off. So you guys, you'll just bear with me. Yeah. So what should I do? I think I should share these notes right now so that I'll be telling you where to follow me from because I think this won't work for long. So I was talking about sinuses, and I told you that sinuses are actually cavities or holes. Uh, they're just hollow spaces in the bones of other tissues. I'm not sure. Denzel, are you able to share the screen from your end? Yes. Uh, it's strong. So I think I'm really struggling to do all this. Kindly do so that I proceed from there.
Okay. So it seems like Elisha is having some challenges with his network. I believe my voice is clear. So I'll just take it up from where he stopped as we wait for him. Um, so you'll allow me just to move behind to the synaxes and begin from here. So as we wait for Elisha, I think we can talk about the synaxes, and once he joins, he'll take it up from where I'll stop. So as he has said, we have some organs called sinuses. That's when it's many sinuses. And this particular organ, the sinuses, they are simply just cavities. And a cavity is an opening or a hollow space. A cavity is an opening or a hollow space. And so sinuses are hollow spaces or cavity on bones. Number one, on bones, or number two, it can be on in tissues. An example of sinuses are this. We have four types of sinuses. Number one is the frontal sinus. Number two is the ethmoid sinus. Number three is the maxillary sinus, and then fourth is the sphenoid sinus. And mostly these particular sinuses, they at times get blocked when we catch a cold or catch a flu, because they're normally fluid filled. They normally get filled with a lot of mucus, so they get blocked, and at times you always feel it. Mostly the ethmoid sinuses, these ones here, I'll draw a square, these ones here. So they mostly at times get blocked, and the maxillary sinuses, to those who have allergies, to those probably if you catch a cold or stuff. So these particular openings, they're in the bones and they're called sinuses. And how are they clinically significant in relation to probably diagnosing a disease? Um, you'll always feel like your nose is blocked. And when you feel that, then the sinus is affected. They should always be hollow. And so, number one, the functions of the sinus, these hollow spaces, is to lighten the skull and help warm and moisten air. And so this is what is to us significant. That is it helping to warm the air and moisten air. This should be number two, moisten air. And so I believe that we talked about initially. I wasn't really that keen when he was talking about the nose initially, but there are ways through which the air that we breathe, it's not oxygen. We don't breathe in oxygen, but we breathe in air. And in the air that we breathe, there is oxygen in it, there is dust, there is CO2, there's nitrogen, and there's a combination of gases from the oxygen that we breathe in. And at times, that particular air that we breathe in, it can be polluted by dust or by smoke. And in our nose, the Savior has placed different mechanisms through which these particular foreign substances, the smoke, the dust, and these small particles can be wafted away from our nose. An example is the mucus that we have in our nose. Then the cilia. The cilia is a type of hair in the nose. So we have mucus, or as I said, the topmost layer of every organ is always called the epithelium. So the epithelium is coated with mucus in the nose and in the digestive system, and it helps to moisten, it helps to trap dust and all that. And so this is an organ in the upper respiratory system. When we'll be studying diseases, we'll group them into two. The diseases that affect the upper respiratory system. I believe that Elisha told us about the upper and the lower respiratory system. The upper respiratory system, or the organs in the upper respiratory system, are simply the nasal cavity, the sinuses, um, the throat, and the voice box. The voice box is the throat. That's the larynx, the pharynx. We'll see them in the coming slides. And we have the sinuses, we have the nose, and so on. From the trachea going downwards, that's the lower respiratory system. And in the lower respiratory system, most of the diseases that affect the lower respiratory system are like asthma, bronchitis, pneumonia, and such. So this is just briefly about the sinuses, and that's their clinical significance, them being blocked. And such blockages can at times be done away with by using simple remedies like menthol crystals, putting them in water, in very hot water that is evaporating, and then inhaling that vapor. If you don't want to go through all that, probably if you are traveling and you catch a cold and your nose gets blocked, what you can use is just using an essential oil. Peppermint is peppermint or eucalyptus or peppermint. Peppermint is normally as well used for digestive disturbances, digestive issues. It's normally very good for that. And so we have peppermint oil, essential oil for blockages, peppermint. We have eucalyptus. So eucalyptus, you can use both the essential oil and you can use the crystals. And the crystals, you do steam inhalations. When we'll be doing our practicals, we'll see how steam inhalation can be done. And then for the essential oil, you can just apply it on this region of the nose. I'll use a black pen to show us this region here of your nose. This region here, you can just apply some essential oil, be it peppermint or eucalyptus. It will help do away with the blockages. And then on top of that, you can use just a drop of eucalyptus or peppermint internally. That's if it's internal use. And other remedies that you can use for such is, let me use a red pen. Other remedies that you can use for such is garlic. This is not a red pen. Is garlic. I believe the writings are clear. We have garlic. We have onions. Garlic is antibiotic, antiviral. Onions, antibiotic, antiviral. And mostly upper respiratory or the lower, they're normally viral. They're normally infections, be it viral or bacterial. You can use as well honey. Cayenne is very good for blockages as well. Cayenne pepper. If you find the African cayenne, it would be better. So let's continue to the next organ. The next organ, we talked about this particular organ, that is the pharynx. This organ is divided into three regions. This organ is divided into three regions. And the first region is the nasopharynx. Naso simply means the nose. The nose. Nasopharynx. And then we have oro. Oro simply means oral, the mouth. So the pharynx below, after the mouth, and then laryngo, which is the throat, is the pharynx just behind the throat. So throat. So we have the blue one as the one that is just above the throat, laropharynx, and then oro, that is the one just behind the mouth, the green one, and then naso is this one here. I believe that is yellow. Um, this is not really that significantly beneficial, but it's good knowledge to know that the pharynx is divided into three sections. And so for the nasopharynx, that is the nose, this particular yellow one, the yellow one, what are its function? So strictly, it's just an air passage. It's an air passage. And then the oral serves as a common passage for food and air. So that would mean pharynx in general, its function would be passage of air, passage of food if we get to the oral. And then the laryngopharynx, the one that is just above the throat, um, it serves as a common passage for food, air. It lies posterior to the upright epiglottis. And what do we mean by that? Posterior is behind the epiglottis. This one here is epiglottis. The one circled in red is the epiglottis. And so if we say that lies posterior, posterior simply means behind the epiglottis, and it's upright. So it extends to the throat, that is the larynx. It extends to the throat where the respiratory and digestive pathways diverge. And what helps in that diversion is the epiglottis, and other organs help in the separation of the air, and what should get into the trachea and what should get into the esophagus. So if there's a problem probably with food not going into the right place, then it is the pharynx that you should look at. We'll see that further. So that is the pharynx basically and its functions. And then the larynx, today we'll just cover the upper respiratory system. So the larynx, that is the voice box, so the throat, it attaches to the hyoid bone. I'll explain what this bone is. Hyoid bone, and opens into the larynx. Just a minute. Before we talk about the laryngopharynx, just a minute. Okay, so the voice box or the larynx, it attaches to the hyoid bone, the bone that separates this bone, the hyoid bone, it separates the brain and the nasal cavity, separates the central nervous system and the nasal cavity, and it opens into the laryngopharynx. And I believe I explained what laryngopharynx is. Um, superiorly, superior simply means above. So it's continuous with the trachea, inferiorly to mean below, to mean the trachea is below it, and the laryngopharynx is above it. So how can we locate it here? If this is the trachea, this one here, from here going downwards, the one in red going downwards, if this one is the trachea, then the laryngopharynx is superior It is above the trachea. So let's see. We are told that um, the larynx, it opens into the laryngopharynx superiorly, like the laryngopharynx is above it, and it continues with the trachea inferiorly. So to mean the laryngopharynx is between the trachea and the larynx. So where's the trachea? The trachea is this part, this section going down. Where's the laryngopharynx? This section going up. So between these two sections, we have the larynx. We'll see a picture in a few. So what are some of the functions of these particular organ of the upper respiratory system? So it provides patent air, cool, moist air, cool, moist, and warm. Okay, warm and cool, probably someone might say they cannot fall under the same category. It is cool and moist and to body temperature. To act as switching mechanism to root air and food. So its main function is this one, switching mechanism. When you eat, it directs the food into the esophagus. When you breathe in air, it directs the air into the trachea, into the trachea. So into the trachea. The other function, it helps in voice production. And mostly when you have some infection or some bacterial infection, you might lose your voice. You might lose your voice or the sound. And at times when you also talk a lot in very high pitch or in a very loud voice, you might end up losing your voice. And so when that happens, it is the larynx that is affected. It means that the infection is affecting the larynx. And when the larynx is affected, then you need to know the herbs probably to use. Herbs that are indicated for upper respiratory health. An example is golden seal, which is very powerful for upper respiratory health. You can boil a cup of honey and add 10 drops of eucalyptus oil for lost voices. A cup of honey, add 10 drops of eucalyptus oil, just mix it thoroughly, and you can take a teaspoon after after every probably after every 30 minutes or after every hour. Just take a teaspoon and your voice will be back to normal. And if you combine golden seal to that, you'll be good to go. Treating infections are normally very one of the easiest things to do. So this one here is the larynx, and it is also divided into two. That is, we have the epiglottis, we have the vocal cords, the goliters, we have the supragoliters and subgoliters. The one that is epi simply mean center. So the center of the goliters is epiglottis. Supra simply mean above the goliters. And then we have the goliters here, the one circled in red. So supra is above the goliters. Sub is below the goliters, it is below. And then epi is at the center of the goliters. And it's the epiglottis that helps direct food into the trachea, and it blocks the passage into the trachea. When you eat, it blocks passage into the trachea. So the esophagus, normally it's behind the trachea or the windpipe. This one is the windpipe. This one here with the C-shaped things, this one is the windpipe. And behind it, we have the trachea. This one here, this one here, this one here is the trachea. The one that I'm coloring and drawing is the trachea. So let me rub, is the trachea and the windpipe. So I believe that is clear up to that end. Up to that end, I believe all that is clear. Mm. So that is all about the upper respiratory anatomy. That's anatomy. We've not talked about the physiology of the upper respiratory system. Is there any questions so far? Is there any questions so far? There's probably there's no questions. Let me check the chat box. Okay, there's nothing in the I want us to look at the trachea. I want us to look into the trachea a bit, and then we want to define the lower respiratory tract a bit, and then probably we'll just call it a class. Functions and its features. So number one, it is flexible. Number two, it is mobile. Mobile here would simply mean it can easily move. It is not permanently strategically placed in your chest. An example, if you have a serious accident, the trachea can easily it can easily be disoriented. Not really disoriented, but it can easily um, get out of shape. Okay, I'm really not getting the exact term, but let me try and draw. This is your trachea. Normally, it should be that way, shaped in your chest. But when you get an accident and probably it becomes this way, this is your chest. Your chest is normal, but the trachea is not normal. You'll start having problems. It can easily go this way. But for your stomach and your intestines, it's very easy for them to get out of shape or to go this way, unless unless um, unless the cavity is interfered with through very sharp, unless the cavity is interfered with through very sharp, how is it called? Very sharp wounds or cuts or whatever that would really get inside to them. So number one, it is flexible, it is mobile. To explain flexibility, probably if you take ugali, some big, a lot of food, not really a lot of food, but if you swallow something big and it happens to get into your trachea will be able to expand to accommodate that thing to move down or below. So it has that ability. If your epiglottis doesn't do its function of blocking food substances from getting into the trachea and they eventually get there, the trachea can easily adapt by widening or opening to accommodate the food. And that will still affect, it will still cause shortness of breath and all that. So flexibility, and it is mobile. It is mobile. And it is composed of three layers. It is composed of three layers. I didn't put slides for, I didn't put pictures for the trachea, but I'll just explain and then probably show a picture tomorrow. So the uppermost layer, that is the mucus, it is made up of goblet cells and ciliated epithelium. What do I mean? What is meant by ciliated? Ciliated here simply mean airs. Cilias are air. So the epithelium, which I said is the uppermost layer, the uppermost layer of any organ, of any conduct is normally called the epithelium, the outermost layer of an organ. A passage is normally called the epithelium. So by ciliated epithelium, it simply means that the uppermost layer has some air. That particular air is called the cilia. It's responsible, the cilia is responsible for wafting out or pushing away dust and foreign particles from getting into the lungs. And you'll start coughing and feeling so. If that happens, there is an activity that we'll talk about that causes the cough, and you'll be irritated when you breathe in air that has a lot of dust or pollen or whatever. So it has some mucus. It has some mucus which are secreted by the goblet cells, and the mucus is very essential. For what? Why is the mucus very essential? Number one, the mucus is essential because the mucus has anti-infectious agents. The mucus has antibodies that helps to fight infection. That is why it is normally very easy to catch diseases like pneumonia in very hot areas, in very cold areas. In cold areas, the air that we breathe in is normally very cold, and it requires a lot of mucus to warm it up. And at times you might feel like your nose is dry. At times you might feel like your nose is dry when you're breathing air in very in very cold areas like Limuru, you'll feel a bit irritated in your nose. And that normally provides a very good environment for the breeding of the bacteria that cause pneumonia. And so if it can worsen such conditions in cold. So the goblet cells are responsible for secreting mucus, which has antibodies which kill any any type of bacteria, fungus, or a virus that gets into the nose through the air that we breathe. And then the cilia, they just waft away foreign particles. And then it has a submucus, which is also another layer, the second layer. It's just a connective tissue deep to the mucus. So let's say this is the trachea. I'm trying to draw the trachea. Let me rub everything in my slide so that you only see one drawing. I'll use a red pen. So let's say this pipe here is mucus, is the trachea. And so the first layer, the layer that I'll draw in black, I believe black will be visible. The very first layer, the shaded black, let's say that is the mucus. It is the epithelial layer. And on top of the epithelial layer, there is mucus. There's mucus. There are goblet cells that secrete mucus. And then there is air, which is called cilia. There is air. There is air. There is air called cilia. And then the next layer, I'll draw the next layer in, let's see if orange will work. The next layer is the submucus, just below the epithelial. Below the red, we have some layer here called the submucus layer, just below the epithelial submucus layer, which is a connective tissue. And then we have the adventitia, which is the outermost layer, and it is made up of C-shaped rings. So let me take that one. Let me try. Let's see if green will work. So the outermost layer is the adventitia, which is made up of C-shaped rings. That's why you'll see the trachea with C-shaped rings that way. That outermost layer, it has C-shaped rings that helps keep the trachea rigid. It helps keep the trachea rigid and in good shape. It holds the trachea in good shape. And so the outermost layer made of the C-shaped rings of the hairline cartilage. A cartilage is more or less like a rubber band. So that basically is all I can say. Not really all, but the most I can say about the trachea. Though there is though there is more to talk about on the trachea. And so you see the mucous membrane lining of the trachea. As I have said, it consists of some the ciliated mucus. They are pseudostratified. By that, what I simply mean is they're very, very, very close together and they're aligned in one direction. And they're aligned in one direction, and they help in maintaining the integrity of the digestive of the respiratory system. And so if the trachea is constantly irritated, an example is through smoking. This one, it can cause, number one, these particular hairs to die, and number two, the goblet cells might die. And so the protective mechanism of the trachea will be lowered through smoking and inhaling anything that is corrosive or irritating. An example are a poisonous poisoned air or chemicals in there and such. Those who stay near industries and such, you'll interfere with the integrity of your trachea, and you'll start having very serious coughs. Coughs that probably do not respond to any form of treatment. An example, if you cook with firewood a lot, that particular smoke affects the integrity of your respiratory system. It affects the system. And one day you might end up having dry coughs that do not respond to treatments at all. And so that is one of the ways these particular structures are clinically beneficial. We need to know them. So I'll beg to move now to the next thing. Is there any question so far? Okay, so I'll proceed if there are no questions. I'll ask as a question. Does anyone know, or does anyone remember what conducting zones are? What are conducting zones? I believe Alicia talked about them in the initial slides. I also mentioned them yesterday when I was introducing this topic. What are conducting zones? Somebody to kindly remind us. I've deliberately blackened the screen. I've deliberately blackened the screen. What are these zones? What are these zones? Conducting zones. Someone to tell us what conducting zones are. Probably my writing is so small. This is an O, this is an N, this is a D. Conducting zones in respect to the respiratory system. Mm, Okay. There are passages through which, thank you, Joel. Um, there are passages through which air passes in relation to respiration, e.g., the trachea, the bronchus. Yes, exactly. And we say that the trachea is one of the conducting zones. Now that we are talking about the trachea, let's see and talk about the conducting zones. So let me unblacken my screen so that we can proceed. Mark this word, crania. I'll explain what it is. So anatomic structure, anatomic simply mean position or location, the shape. That is what anatomy means, the shape and all that. So anatomic structure forming a projecting central ridge. So the crania, this is where let me see if I'll get a picture for, okay, let me just draw. I'm normally not good in drawing, but allow me just draw. Use a red pen so that to explain the crania. So this one here is your trachea, and then the trachea, it branches to form the bronchus. When there are two, it's bronchi. And then there are C-shaped organs. That's the C-shaped organ, and then we have another C-shaped organ here. And then we have the C-shaped organ here, the same way and all the way to the top. And then the last C-shaped organ here before the trachea branches to the two cilia. This is what is called the crania. Let me label it with, I believe my voice is clear. Let me label it with black. This one here is the crania. This one. Cana, or the carina. So that is the carina. So it marks the end of the trachea and the beginning of the right bronchi. Not really that important, but it's good to know it. So the air reaching the bronchi is warm. After going through all that process, it should be number one. Allow me to change my pen. I see red is better. Number one, the air going into the bronchi. The bronchi is this part. Let me draw a rectangle. This part here is the bronchi. The bronchi gets into the lungs. They get into the lungs. Let me draw the lungs. So this section that gets into the lungs is called the bronchi. So the air that gets into the bronchi, it gets there warm, that is to body temperature. It gets there cleansed and purified. It doesn't have any impurities at all, unless there is a problem with your protective mechanisms in the trachea, in the nose, in the larynx, in the pharynx, and all that. And then we have saturated with water vapor. It is as well saturated with water vapor. That's the air reaching the bronchus, and that's what gets into the air sac, and it is diffused into the blood, and it finally gets attached to the red blood cell, and it is transmitted to the organs. That is the oxygen it gets into the red blood cells, and it is transmitted to the vessels. So the bronchi is subdivided into secondary bronchi. So this particular bronchi, it as well divides into other bronchi, divides into other bronchi. Let me draw the bronchi again afresh, just beside here. So the bronchi, it divides into other bronchi. It divides into other bronchi. This one as well divides into other bronchi, divides into other bronchi, and so they become several bronchi. Divide into other bronchi, divides, and so it becomes more or less like a tree. Divides into other bronchi. I'm really sorry I didn't include pictures. The pictures, they normally look more beautiful. Today was a bit held up. It was a holiday, so divides into a bronchi. We had a holiday here in Kenya. Um, so we decided to spend some time at the sanitarium. So yeah. So the bronchi, this is this one, bronchus. It divides into other bronchus. And they divide from primary, this one is primary to secondary, all the way to the tertiary bronchi. That is the smallest ones that gets attached to the air sacs. That gets attached to the air sacs. They're called tertiary. So I believe I see I nowadays know how to draw at least. So the bronchi subdivided into secondary bronchi, each supplying a lobe of the lung, and it goes all that way to the tertiary bronchi. So I'll move to the next slide. The next thing. Air passages undergo 23 orders of branching into the lungs. Oh no, what did I just do to my slide? So that is all about the conducting zones. The conducting zones, that is the trachea and the bronchi. So where does respiration actually now happens? The respiratory zones. This is where now the exchange of gas happens. And I won't proceed here because there's a lot that we need to discuss, and there are pictures that I need to include, better pictures than this one. So we'll end our class at this one. I don't know how long we've taken today discussing the class, but we'll end our class at this, and then probably tomorrow we'll talk about the respiratory zone. And then before we proceed to the alveoli, we'll talk about the upper respiratory disorders. Tomorrow, we'll talk about flus, colds, and their remedies. We'll see how we can make herbal syrups at our homes, easily at our places to ward against colds and flus during such seasons. So tomorrow we'll look at the respiratory zones and then get into the diseases of the upper respiratory system. So is there any question so far? Is there any question? Is there any question? Okay, there's no question. So I'll beg to stop here and I'll invite one of us to pray with us. Taftazo, you can kindly pray with us. Oh, Vincent, you can pray.
Okay, let us believe and pray. Mighty Father, dwells above, we are very much thankful for guiding us till we started our learning until now. We have come to the end of it, O Lord. As we are breaking, Lord, retiring to bed, request to give us sound rest. Guide us until we meet again. We ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. So we'll meet tomorrow again. That's cohort 3 and cohort 4 for our class. Have a blessed night rest.